Hello, everyone, and welcome. We want to give a special shout out to the students of the Liceo de Licenza Applicate at Carterci Volta Pacinotti of Piombino. This explainer was put together especially for you guys. Today, we're going to tackle a question that sounds really simple, but trust me, it gets more and more fascinating the deeper you go. So let's just get right to it. What was the very first video game? It feels like it should have a straightforward answer, right? But it's actually surprisingly tricky. The whole thing really depends on what you actually mean by video game and maybe even what you mean by first. For a really long time, if you asked anybody, the answer was Pong. It came out in 1972 from a little company called Atari, and it was a total phenomenon. I mean, this was the game that broke into the mainstream, the one you could find in a bar or an arcade, and it's the game that really kicked off the industry we know today. But here's the thing. As important as Pong was, it wasn't even close to the beginning of the story. Okay, let's start peeling back those layers. See, Pong was a monster hit, no doubt about it. But it wasn't even Atari's first game, let alone the world's. To find the real origins, we've got to go way back and look at all the incredible inventions that happened before that big hit. So if we hop in our time machine and go backwards, you can see the pieces falling into place. Just a year before Pong, you had Computer Space, the very first arcade game you could put a coin in and play. It was maybe a little too complicated for people back then, so it kind of flopped. Go back another decade, to 1962, and you find Space War being coded by students at MIT. It was a huge hit inside university computer labs, but it ran on a machine that cost $120,000. That's like over $1 million today. And even before that, in 1958, a nuclear physicist built Tennis for Two on an oscilloscope just to entertain people visiting his lab. The further back we go, the less these things look like the games we play on our PlayStations or our phones. And that forces us to stop and ask a really important question. Before we can find the first video game, we have to agree on what a video game actually is. You know, the legendary designer Sid Meier, the guy who made Civilization, he had this beautifully simple definition. He said, a video game is just a series of interesting decisions. I love that. It cuts right to the heart of it, focusing on what we, the players, do, make choices, and see what happens. It's a fantastic place to start. But of course, the academics have a much more detailed take. There's a whole field called ludology, which is just the study of games. And people in that field, like Jesper Juul, have these super complex definitions about systems of rules and variable outcomes and emotional investment. It's all very thorough, but yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful. So to make this an actual investigation, we need a clear, consistent set of rules. Let's use this 5-point checklist. For something to count, it has to meet all 5. 1, it had to actually exist, no ideas on a napkin. 2, it's gotta have a video signal. You know, an image on a screen, not just some blinking lights. 3, it has to be interactive, so your actions directly change what's on that screen. 4, its main purpose has to be entertainment. And 5, you have to be able to play it just by looking at the screen without needing to stick things on top of it. All right, now for the fun part. We've got our checklist, so let's put on our detective hats and start looking at the earliest contenders. We're gonna see which of these ancient machines actually measure up. Our search takes us all the way back to 1947, to a patent for something called the cathode ray tube amusement device. It was basically a missile simulator where you turn these knobs to guide a dot on a screen and fire it at a target. And right away, you can see our problem. It checks a few boxes, right? It used a video signal, it was interactive, and it was meant for fun. But, and these are big buts. First, we have no proof anyone ever actually built a working one. It was just a patent. And second, the targets weren't on the screen. You had to physically place plastic sheets or overlays on top of the screen to play. So it's really more of an electromechanical toy. Okay, next up, let's jump to 1950 and meet a real giant, Birdie the Brain. This thing was 4 meters tall. That's huge. It was shown off at the Canadian National Exhibition, and it let people play tic-tac-toe against a pretty smart AI that even had difficulty settings. Now, Birdie was definitely real, and it was interactive and fun for sure, but it fails on the most important word in the phrase video game, the video part. Its display wasn't a screen. It was just a big grid of light bulbs that would turn on and off. Super cool for 1950, but without a video signal, it's just not a video game. So that brings us to 1952 at Cambridge University. A student named Alexander Douglas was working on his PhD about how humans and computers could interact. For his thesis, he created a game of tic-tac-toe, or noughts and crosses, as they say in Britain, on this massive computer called the EDCAC. He called his program OXO. Okay, so let's run OXO through our checklist. Did it exist? Yes, it did. Did it have a video signal on a screen? Yep, a cathode ray tube. Was it interactive? Yes, you used an old rotary telephone dial to make your moves. Was it for entertainment? Check. And was the whole game playable right there on the display? Yes, it was. Would you look at that? OXO seems to tick every single one of our boxes. So, that's it then? Case closed? Is OXO the first video game? Well, yes and no. The more you look into it, the more you realize that searching for a single first is kind of like a myth. The history here isn't a neat, straight line that starts in one place. A much better way to think about it is that video games have a constellation of origins. You had all these different things happening at once. Stuff in university labs, stuff being designed for your living room, stuff being built for arcades, and they each have their own unique first. So this constellation is full of these bright, shining stars, and each one is a first in its own way. So, the first academic game? It's probably a checkers program that actually beat EXO by just a few months. The first game made just for public entertainment? That's Tennis for Two. The first console for your home? That's Ralph Baer's Brown Box, which later became the Magnavox Odyssey. The first arcade game you could pay to play? Computer Space. And the first game to become a cultural juggernaut? Well, we're right back where we started. Pong. So we kind of end up where we began, but with a much richer picture. The question isn't just what was the first video game? The real question is, what does first actually mean to you? Is it that initial spark of an idea in a lab? Is it the first time you could actually buy it and put it in your house? Or is it that moment when a game just explodes into culture and changes everything? The answer, as it turns out, is a story with a lot of different amazing beginnings. Thanks for joining me.